Today we are going to be organizing our fabric and cutting pieces for our butterfly quilt. This is part of the inventory quilt project in conjunction with Just Wanna Quilt. In February 2020, I started the inventory quilt project, and I'll link to the original video. I will also link to the PDF download, this one-page version. If you can figure out how to quilt from this, feel free. It is a free download for you. And I'm using this to plan my cutting for today. I dove into my scrap bin of 2.5-inch strips and pulled out all my greens and orange and a big variety of purple to make this butterfly version. You can see the original angel wings behind me on the wall, but I wanted to try it with individual 2.5-inch squares. So I'm going to get started on the cutting for that. I have a special tool that I'm going to use to cut all the patches for my inventory quilt. This is the strip cut ruler from Off the Wall Quilt, and I showed you the adjustable quilt strip ruler in a previous video, and I'll link to that, but the companion strip ruler is fabulous for quickly cutting all your pieces. I used the center line guide to mark my 2.5-inch piece, and the ruler has grooves, so it fits exactly over my 2.5-inch strip. This is measured for 2.5-inch squares, so you need to use the center guide, not the edge, to take into account this space on the ruler. But I can just set this down on my fabric. It's perfectly aligned there, and I can just cut 2.5-inch squares until I have all that I need for my butterfly quilt. So let's move to the cutting table and I will show you how that works. Okay, I have my pattern handy. I've made a note of how many squares of each color I need, and I am going to start with my orange pieces. And I am just going to line those up. And figure out how many I need here. I think I can do about 6 layers comfortably. So what I'm going to do is I've got all those edges. Well, I should probably make a fresh cut. So let me do that first. Make a fresh straight edge on my fabric. And then I'm going to place the strip cut ruler right on the end. I've set my guide piece to 2.5 inches, and I have placed the ruler. The grooves there sit right on the edge, so if I were cutting along that strip, that guide would keep everything in place and you'll always get a perfectly square patch. And I can easily cut through my first set of, let's see, I need to keep track. So there's 5 different oranges for my butterfly. So I'm going to put the rest of those pieces back in my scrap bin to use in another project. And I am going to line up a bunch of different oranges here, because the idea of the inventory quilt is completely different squares in your design. So every patch is different, and again, I need to straighten that fabric. So I'm going to line this edge of the ruler up, not the intended use of that ruler, but you get the idea. And move that over a little bit. Line up the guide, sits right against that cut edge of my fabric, and I get my, just checking the measurements there, they looked a little bit off, and I've got my 5 more oranges, so I'll set those aside and keep going here with my fabric. So I will cut all my patches here that I need for my butterfly according to the pattern, which you can download. And I will, through the magic of television, come back with all my pieces for the inventory quilt. I have all the orange pieces that I need for my butterfly inventory quilt, and I trimmed all my purple squares and realized as I was digging through the very bottom layer of my stash that I don't have as much purple as I thought, so I needed to expand my color selection. So I dug through my blues because I need some half square triangle pieces, and I'm going to use the easy angle ruler to trim those, and we are going to double up the speed for that. So again, magic of technology. Truth moment. It's time to cut the green background squares for my butterfly inventory quilt. And I did some math. If I pixelated this design and had to choose a different green for each of those squares, I would need 104 squares. My stash is big, but it is not big enough to have 104 different green squares. So rather than make this a total insanity project, I am going to modify my design. And instead of using individual green squares in the background, I'm going to be using bigger strips across between the wings and around the side. So recalculated, I only need 23 green strips to fit around my butterfly. And well, I'll say 27 because I want to add some strips on the top and the bottom. So that is where I am going with this. I may add some extra pieces on the side. So this pattern is evolving, and I hope you are having fun sewing along with me. So let's finish cutting out all of our pieces for the inventory quilt, however you decide to modify and organize your quilt. I'll see you in the next video when we lay out the butterfly and start sewing.
True Blue Quilts is a place to enjoy working with our stash of fabric as we experiment with making scrappy quilts and excel in cutting with tools like the strip cut ruler from Off the Wall Quilt. I'd love to hear how you got started quilting. I share my quilting legacy in the video you see on your screen right now. Hit the subscribe button so you can keep sewing along with us. I'll see you in that next video.